Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Well, new series, a new season, a new car with, well, same old car. New tyre compound that's been added though. It's time for the DoohanOK MX5 series, first round of the season, and although the skies look nice and sunny for right now, throughout the season, you may see some tinges of grey. And oh, is that the sky water falling, Dave? Have you seen this thing called sky water for MX5s?
Yeah, it's a very, very recent invention. Hopefully it doesn't flood the whole Earth because I don't have an Ark, but the weather looks relatively dry so much. It's a kind of an all-star format we have for DoohanOK MX5 series with some really, really well-known names, not least the namesake itself.
And for this very first round of the season, we're going to be going for a short enjoyment of the MX5. It's actually, I always enjoy seeing more action in this car as well. We're going to be going to the Daytona road course for this one. And it is going to be on the normal layout that you would see during the 24 hours of Daytona as well. None of that silly NASCAR chicanes, none of the silly moto layout as well. There she is in all her 2.5 miles of oval glory, and that in a few right-hand turns as well. Qualifying has just kicked off in the background for the DoohanOK MX5 Championship, and Dave, it's going to be a draft fest here tonight. Anything can and usually does happen with these cars around this circuit.
Yeah, that's what we love about the road circuit here at Daytona International Speedway. That long run from turn 6 around the banking to the braking zone of now the Le Mans chicane, and then the even longer, more full throttle run out of that quick chicane along the super speedway banking past the start-finish straight and then braking in towards turn number 1. Everywhere you take these MX5s, they're going to slipstream off each other, they're going to race in packs, but even more so here at Daytona. That's what we expect to see in the racing. It's also a little bit of what we're going to see in this qualifying as well.
Yeah, and this is one of the more interesting parts of this racing event as well, is for the qualifying format, you cannot pick up an incident point, or else that lap is going to be aborted. So pick a drafting partner, pick a dancing partner, and then the bump drafting you'd normally see in the race day. There'll be none of that in the qualifying format either. And first laps will be on the board in probably about 30 or 40 seconds or so. But let's talk a little bit about the format as it's going to happen here tonight. We will get a 20-minute sprint race following the conclusion of qualifying, and from that, I believe it's to be out of qualifying, will be the top 10 will be inverted in the feature. From there, we'll get a 40-minute race to round things out for the evening, and that's probably going to give us a little bit of a pit stop as well there, Dave. So pit stops in the MX5 out of a draft train, or feels a little bit NASCAR-y for my liking.
Well, we'll keep our eyes on it as we get towards the racing, but there's a bit of games afoot. I see a lot of guys checking up on the banking, trying to make other people lead so they can pick up the toe here. And I think at a good time to have a look at who's on the grid, because of course we have Jack Doohan, but then the top qualifying at the moment with the first time goes Jamie Christensen. Gianni Lutzu is over 10,000 iRating, and he's on the grid here with Jacob Reed, Jeremy Fairbairn, Brad Newman, Jared Filsell, Thomas McMillan, Frank Mossman. So we're just getting the first times now, but I saw a lot of drivers through the speedway turns 3 and 4 towards the end of the lap, just jostling, jockeying for a little bit of position, trying to set themselves up to get into a flying lap, maybe about half a second, a little bit further behind another car to try to pick up a toe.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be all about, is timing the run as well. So for Christensen at the moment, off and running off on his own, but it's working for him. Everyone else is sort of caught up in the next pack, which has currently got Thomas Millen at the head of this one. And Jeremy Fairbairn that we're riding with at the moment as well, also up at the pointy end of this. So it's about getting yourself settled in at the right time. And for now, it's keeping our eyes on a number of drafting groups. I can tell you Jacob Reed just set the fastest sector from the bus stop chicane all the way back to the start-finish line, so times for him going to be extremely quick. Second time will be on the board this time by. We're only going to get about, I think, 3 actual flying laps here, Dave. 10 minutes in, it's going to take you about 2 minutes to get out and around. Yeah, it's only going to be about 3 minutes in terms of 3 actual qualifying attempts.
Yep, and then it's a hard cut to the end of this qualifying as well, isn't it? The way it's configured with our sprint races and our 2 races. So you have to get around and do that whole outlap, and then you don't get any extra extended time after the checkered flag begins waving. But does it matter a whole lot?
Daytona? Probably not.
With an inverted top 10 and 9 cars?
So actually, you want to set the slowest valid lap time, or at least have the lowest I rating in the session, because that means we'll start on pole. And at the moment, we're riding on board as Jeremy Fairbairn goes around the outside of Jacob Reed on the run to the stripe. Reed's going to get himself a little bit of a toe, and then down off the banking surface as well. And Fairbairn goes to the top, but it's going to be Brad Newman, who was the 3rd car in that train, who actually goes a touch faster. As into the 208s, the times start to fall, and recognises he's not going to get another lap in for Brad Newman. It might lead to a quick loo break for him prior to racing action here tonight. And Christensen's 209.513 going to be reasonably solid towards the pointy end of the field, albeit without that toe. At least for the start of qualifying day.
And it's a bit of a home track for Jeremy Fairbairn from Florida, currently residing in the UK, I believe, but originally from, I guess that's kind of near Fort Lauderdale. I don't know my South Florida geography especially well, but certainly a lot closer than you or I, or definitely even closer than Jack Doohan.
Jack, of course, participating in around Formula 1 commitments. I was really disappointed, actually, that he only got the installation lap in during the Canadian Grand Prix over the weekend as well. I bet he would have been a little bit disappointed as well.
A bit robbed by the weather, all things considered. They're a very interesting spanner into the Canadian Grand Prix of 2024, but didn't necessarily benefit Jack Doohan with his FP1 session. And Newman remains the top of this qualifying. And looking at who else is going to get around to finish a lap, who's got some purple sectors. Jacob Reed from 4th has a purple sector or 2, but then I think has backed it off somewhat. McMillan is with a time of 2:09, going to cross the line, potentially move up from 7th. Ooh, got a bump or went off the track or something, and towing around Jack Doohan, who also has no lap yet in this qualifying session.
But that's going to put him towards the pointy end of the things. When we go racing, this is Zach Ratroy White missing a time on the board as well. Ayumu Iwasa as well, currently cutting his way through the bus stop.
Formula 2 racer?
Yep. And unfortunately, car gets a little bit light and unsettled. But he'll now get the opportunity to finish off that lap. It won't be valid though, did cut the grass. This is sort of, for low numbers in a session, it's a veritable who's who of high-level sim races too, which is really interesting to watch.
For those of you out there who know what it means, we're at a strength of field of 5,600 iRating, so that's pretty high. That it's big guns, it's special invitational, it's all-star stuff, really.
Yeah, it is. And in terms of qualifying results, that lap from Brad Newman will go to the top of the standings and stay there by about half a second. In fact, pretty much bang on half a second. Jeremy Fairburn will line up off alongside of him prior to the invert. Of course, remember a top 10 invert as well. Jared Filsell was third in terms of qualifying, only 600s quicker than Jacob Reed. Johnny Lutsu and Jamie Christensen are going to round out your top 6. In terms of qualifying results, and don't forget, we're going to put a big old flip on them, so it'll be Zach Rattray-White failed to set a qualifying time. Will actually be our pole position. Off alongside of him will be Jack Doohan. Frank Mossman in 69 machine will be on row number 2 off alongside of Thomas McMillan. Jamie Christensen and Gianni Lutsu on row number 3. We'll throw it back to Jacob Reed, Jared Filsell, Jeremy Fairburn, Brad Newman, and Ayumo Uwasa to round us out, which is really interesting because Ayumu Uwasa didn't actually was 11th in terms of the standing. There was 11 cars in the standing. Ayumu would have theoretically been pole position, but instead starts from the rear.
And we're going to have a lot of fun momentarily when we get racing because we are a standing start on the banking. So that is a little unconventional. Think, hey, you start on the outside lane, you start with more gravitational potential energy.
And you got to be careful because it's one of the few standing starts in the Mazda where you can actually light up the tires as well because of that. So, physics, do you use them for you or do you use them against you, David Haynes? Do you take on the universe or do you lean with it?
I think you're starting on the outside lane, you immediately cut down, get that little ramp start to get you going. I think it's 10 seconds, and the starting sequence begins now.
Well, it will indeed. We're going to be going for 20 minutes of racing the first time by. Inverted top 10. Ayumu Uwasa, the only driver from the rear of the field. And look at the wheels all light up as all the MX5s get underway. And power down to turn number 1 and turn number 2 as they turn in. Depends which track map you tend to read as to what's 1 and what's 2. Is the kink turn 1? Who's going to be trying to dive their way through? Brad Newman's going to get a big shot to the rear end of his car. Did not get a great launch off of 1 and actually lost the rear end on cold tires. I tell you what, Jacob Reed cutting his way through the field as well. But for the meantime, Rattray-White is going to lead us down to the horseshoe for the first time tonight, Dave.
Filsell had a big hit and now he's around, and I wonder if he didn't damage the engine, damage the front of the car there or something. He was one of the drivers who made a bit of contact with the concertina in towards turn 1, and then begun losing some time. Doesn't show much mark or much sign of damage there, but it's a cold track. It was cold tyres when we got off that race start, and soon they'll be back around onto the banking and slipstreaming like the MX5s always do, but Zach Rattray-White's converted that pole position into still leading for the moment.
One of the big keys here as well is doing a little bit of fuel math. How many laps are you going to get in 20 minutes? And how much fuel do you need on board? Because it's absolutely relevant. The less horsepower you've got, the more body weight is relevant to your peak speeds. But for the meantime, just about everyone's starting to file their way in on lap number 1. One of the cars was up the banking. I think that might have been Jacob Reed, who's managed to slot his way back in. Awasa from the rear of the field's made up a couple spots so far, and Christensen's just watching at the tail end of the field. This is the battle up at the pointy end as Frank Mossman goes for a move, trying to go to the lead and drops back into third. Gianni Lutsu's kicked his way through as Jack Doohan is going to lead us out of the bus stop for the first time, but Lutsu got all out of control and drops a number of spots. I think that might have been a slowdown, and was.
Yeah, so Lutsu goes up high on the banking and will get absolutely freight trained by all the other MX5s coming around to complete lap number 1. Think he's gotten rid of the slowdown he has, so he just pulls back into the slipstream in the tow. Jack Doohan up front, Jared Filsell and Gianni Lutsu at the tail of the field. But right now, there's a lot of bump drafting, a lot of working in pairs, and this is what the MX5s do on the banking, on the speedway, fanning out 3 wide, 4 wide down towards turn 1.
Yeah, now pick where you're going to try and drive it down in and park the car up. Is it going to be deep on the apex? Well, there were 3 wide as they got down in there, and it's going to be Fairburn, Newman, and McMillan. McMillan manages to hang on to that spot as well. Rattray White manages to slot back into third. McMillan's going to go for a big send down the inside. Manages to get that one pulled up. Rattray White was looking to try and fill the spot in, but Brad Newman found a way to park his car down and in there, and finally they'll settle down on the run down to the turn 5 kink. 2 abreast in the mid-pack, but for the meantime, Doohan and Frank Mossman lead the way. Jack Doohan's going to go to the outside, deep on the anchors as they get down to turn 6. Gets it pulled up, but there's tyre smoke in the background.
I think it was Fairbairn there getting a little bit sideways, kicking up some smoke. You've got your top 10 here, jostling for position, slipstreaming, bump drafting on the speedway, all of that. Poor Jared Filsell is 6 seconds behind and will struggle to catch them. So your top 10 is this group of cars and only one driver missing out on the party at the moment.
Yeah, albeit he's had a successful week in terms of supercar escapades. So hey, I guess he can take a little bit of a back seat in terms of MX5s. And I can tell you, the drivers in the sim, they're having a little bit of fun. Everyone talking about pushing, how hard they can push, where their bump drafting partners are. And Rattray White backs out a little bit. It's going to let a couple of cars go. It was Thomas McMillan with a big old send, and now Brad Newman will have him attached to the rear bumper. Oh, and by the way, we're only 4 minutes into this one, so there's going to be another 16 minutes of bump drafting goodness for all the fans watching along at home.
Your top 2 trying to get away, but as we ride on board with 4th place Thomas McMillan, you see him continuously applying the front bumper to give Brad Newman a little bit of a shot up towards your leading duo, getting into their slipstream, carrying as much speed as possible and trying to reel in race leader Jack Doohan.
To the bottom of the banking, by the way. I think there was one car that was down there. It was Jerry Fairburn who cut underneath the banking as they got back to the start-finish line. He's going to give a shot to Thomas McMillan because McMillan was all out of shape on the way into turn 1 then. Managed to line it all up and actually get a supreme drive off of turn 1. Now Brad Newman's got Zach Rattray White for company. And the top 2 trying to break away. That didn't work. And now they're back and side-by-side contact! And McMillan got into Doohan, I think it was. And indeed it was. That it was McMillan bumping Doohan, and they will both fall to the rear of the field.
Rattray White there as well, so 3 cars losing out. Zach Rattray White, Jack Doohan, Thomas McMillan. Now Jared Filsell catches McMillan, and you've kind of just got 7 drivers for your top group. The Rattray White might just stay with them, and Jack Doohan's just behind him as well at the first horseshoe.
There's a little bit of a wiggle there in the middle of the corner as well. Got checked up with the car up ahead, and yeah, not much that really could have been done. Unfortunately, that is racing for Thomas McMillan. And now they're going to have to try and sort themselves out and find their bump drafting partners. This now comes down to who can be the better pack that works together, because instead of Jared Filsell being out on his lonesome, he's now got a partner to see if he can push back, as are the pair of partners up towards the pointy end of the field. Brad Newman gets a bit of a hand from Jeremy Fairbairn. And where do you want to sit, David Hayes? Because start to read this pack now and you might have a more successful 40-minute feature.
Oh, I think somewhere in the grandstand at the start-finish line within easy reach of a snack stand. Other than that, probably sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th in the pack at the moment. First place is a stressful place to be. As you see, Frank Mossman's about to get freight trained by Newman and Fairbairn, and then Gianni Lutzu as well. Then I also don't want to be Thomas McMillan or Jared Filsell off the back of this pack thinking, is there going to be time to catch up, or am I going to get left behind by the bump drafting and the tow and the slipstreaming of the leaders?
One of the benefits, I suppose, if you're back there with Thomas McMillan's shoes, is you got, an experienced race car driver and Jared Filsell. This is a supremely successful one as well. So they will at least be able to generate some momentum, and you'll hope that the pack up ahead squabble, fight, and contend with each other and cost themselves a whole bunch of momentum. I haven't made a whole bunch of ground this time, but they are trying to chase down Zach Rattray White and Jack Doohan off the tail end of the pack as they come through the horseshoes once more. Back to the front end of the field, and it's Fairbairn now who leads the way from Brad Newman. And they'll get it pulled up once again. Still Fairburn leading the way, Dave.
So it is a winner in GB4 competition in the UK last year. Obviously, we've spoken about the accomplishments and what Ayumu Iwasa and Jack Doohan are up to this year. Both of them getting a run in some Formula One equipment in some free practice sessions for different teams. McMillan's had more dramas, I think, from the tail of the field. We had all 11 cars in an inseparable pack for a little while. One by one, a couple of cookies are crumbling out of the box.
Yeah, Jared Filsell, I know, was pushing him extremely hard. I wonder whether or not he's pushed just a touch too hard.
Got 3 wide here.
Any more, because that is going to be exit stage right for Mossman, who will have a supremely hard hit on the front end of that Mazda MX5, and is going to go tumbling through the order. It actually wasn't Frank Mossman. I believe it was Jamie Christensen.
No, it was Mossman.
Was Mossman? Okay.
No, so that we had 3 wide going into the Le Mans bus stop chicane there, as I'm going to call it. And obviously he got pinched and went hard into the wall. Sustained some damage there. And we're going to have a look at exactly how it happened. So we get 3 wide for a moment. Ooh.
It was right at the braking zone. It was Ayumu Iwasa. Didn't recognise that he was looking to pull the car up a little bit earlier. And unfortunately for Mossman, resulting in some damage. Iwasa, though, will punch his way through, and you saw on the replay ticker as well, Zach Rattray-White goes ahead and sets the fastest lap of the race. Oh, they're 3 wide on the exit of turn 5. They're 4 wide on the exit of turn 5. They're going to crawl all over each other. Christensen goes to the point. Lutzu gets through. Newman goes dropping through 1 spot on the exit of turn 5, and Rattray-White back to 3rd. Oh, there's contact. There's more contact in the braking zone.
Even nothing a chance here. Everyone trying to move forward through the pack if they can. Lutzu and Christensen side by side for the lead in this pack right here, as Rattray-White did catch the group, and now he's staring down the leaders.
Indeed, last lap times for the lead group, by the way. 2:09.8 for Christensen Lutzu, 2:10.799, 2:08.2 for Zach Rattray-White. Such was the nature of the mega draft that he got throughout the entirety of the lap, and now the bump drafting games are really on at the front end of this one. Newman supports Gianni Lutzu, and it's going to be Zach Rattray-White and Jamie Christensen who are parked up together. Now it's going to be a long way around for Doohan. Looks to find the open lane as they get to the bus stop. And the thing I love most about this is Christensen goes for a little bit of a spin, gets a tap, gets righted, and then the car is going to continue to tumble. There is damage to the front end of that Mazda. Although I think he's maybe okay yet again and back into the iRacing action. And does remind you very much of the real thing. I'm enjoying this because some of my favourite videos of car racing of all time, David Haynes, is MX5s, both at Sebring and right here at Daytona. 4 wide? Oh yes, why not?
MX5 racing at Daytona is basically the greatest racing that there is, let's be honest. I mean, it's just good football kind of thing. Like, are the cars super high performance? No, not necessarily. But that's what makes the racing good. That's what gives everyone a chance, what leads to the unpredictability of it all, and the sort of the long form, play your hand at the right time and you could come up with a win even if you start the final lap 7th or 8th.
And indeed, 7th or 8th might even be the best position to start that final lap with a huge draft as you come off of turn 7 and the re-entry back to the oval. In the meantime, still single filed out. Christensen's just off the back end of the pack. He's about 2 seconds off the back end of the pack at the moment, but with all the jostling, he may get an opportunity. In fact, I think he has just about picked up the draft, and that's handy for Jared Filsell as well, because if Filsell can get to him, they'll both be back in that draft, and all of a sudden Filsell might have an opportunity. By the way, Filsell took about 3 seconds out of the lead pack on that most recent lap, so another slow lap for the lead pack with all the congestion, and Jared Filsell out on his own, not out of this one just yet.
Jack Doohan's high on the banking, all the way up against the safer barrier, perhaps peering over the wall and getting a look at Daytona Beach Airport. I think I can see a plane's just taken off. But Brad Newman's taken off into the lead of this one, being pushed by Gianni Lutsu on the low line, sending us 4 wide towards the braking zone once again.
And how good was the cover by Newman as well? Moved across to pick up Ayumu Uwasa. And now they'll cut their way through the bus stop chicane on the run down the front straightaway. Now doing that strategy of running high on the banking will present him with an opportunity to get back to the front end of things. And I'm just still keeping an eye out. Christensen's in the draft, and Phil Sell is just ever so barely out. And from Jacob Reed's point of view, what does the chaos look like? Iwasa's going to pull out of the draft. They're now going to go 3 wide. Newman covers it and gets immediately crossed back over. Iwasa gets to the head and crosses from the top line to the bottom line. Now who's going to go brave? Who's looking for it? 5 wide! It only took 7 laps. We're 5 wide on the run down to turn number 1. They'll pull it up when they get at the braking zone. On the anchors, right out to the outside. Jacob Reed at the back end of this pack. And here comes Frank Mossman, I believe, just gets into the back of the pack as well. So everyone just about back in this one. 2 wide. 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2.
They're making space where there isn't space. They're opening checkout lanes where there aren't any staff, and they're sending it down towards turn 1. Still 2 wide through a whole heap of the infield here, but they can see the time ticking down on race number 1. They can know that there's not too many laps still to go in this one.
Well, I think that's the right call there, Dave. Somebody call NASA, because we're making space here, ladies and gentlemen, with the amount of movement that's going on in the pack at the moment. Dillon's managed to get his way back to 3rd spot, becomes 4th now as Fairbairn gets back to the inside. Jacob Reed and Lutsu are still going toe-to-toe. Lutsu's going to try and check up Fairbairn as he gets to the inside at turn 7 and the run back onto the oval. And Frank Mossman got a whole bunch of oversteer as they skipped over the curbing. Now Rattray White looks to build some momentum. And we are starting to run out of time on this one. So it's probably going to be, we might only get 2 more laps, but I think there's enough time there that we'll get 3 more racing laps from the heat. And then there'll be 40 minutes of this madness. And by the way, Phil Sell is back in that pack now. So Jared Phil Sell from 6 seconds off the rear of the pack now rejoins the racing action.
Yeah, so your top 10 all back together and covered by just 2 seconds as they got to the Le Mans chicane, formerly the bus stop chicane, around the back side of the circuit. So 1st through to 10th, not just all in a line, but all side by side, all compressing up to give us an unpredictable grandstand finish to this first of 2 races for the DoohanOK MX5 series. And look at Brad Newman there. Oh, I've got 5 car lengths, 6 car lengths on the rest of the pack. Not for long, and not by the time we get to turn 1.
Yeah, and Newman again goes back down to the bottom line. Who's that's moving around? Oh, Wasser gets a little bit of contact from Reed as Reed was trying to find an open lane. Fairbairn, it is back down off of the banking as well. They're still all in. Oh, and by the way, when they cross that start-finish line, 4 minutes, 30 seconds, we're going to get 3 racing laps just in on this one. And with 10 drivers squabbling, 2 by 2 at the front end of things. Frank Mossman, the first driver, not going 3 wide. And that big old send from Ayumu Uwasa gets down the inside of Rattray White. I think he's got something to prove in the back half of this, although I get the feeling a lot of these guys could be giggling maniacally on Discord. I certainly would be, David Haynes.
Oh, it's good fun, and everyone knows wherever they sit in this pack, they still stand a chance. There's United Airlines coming in to land, but we're about to take off here, that's for sure. It is 4 minutes left to go. It'll be 2 laps to go next time they cross the start-finish line. And once that white flag waves on these drivers, the white flag's like a red flag to some bulls. They're already horns into it, but it is going to go mental on that final lap.
Yeah, and this is now about the setup. Where do you want to be? Jamie Christensen has taken up popcorn eater at the rear end of the field as he's been watching for the last few laps. Not quite close enough to be a part of things, but I think that's been intentional. Ayumu Uwasa moves to the rear end of the pack and picks up a whole host of draft trainage. Zach Rattray White now looking to find somewhere to go through. They're 4 wide at the front end once again. Who's going to be brave on the brakes? Lutsu backs in, tries to find the open lane once again. Reed just about gets a helping from Frank Mossman, and it will be 2 more laps as they roll out of the bus stop chicane for the heat, not for the feature.
Earlier I said that 10th place was 2 seconds away from the race lead. Right now, Christensen in 10th sits 1 second away from the race lead, and it's ever shrinking as we go. Get a bit of 3 wide there, but Jack Doohan still being pushed along in the race lead. They all want to be down on the apron. I think we get 2 more from here. We definitely get 2 more from here.
Jack Doohan was just yelling and said no one under the yellow. They've been going under the yellow the whole time, so I think that's just about out the window. 2 more laps left to run. Jacob Reed using every little bit of road that's available and everything that's outside the white line. And well, I get a feeling this is a little bit Formula One. Oh, there's a big one in the middle of it, and I think it might have been Christensen. No, it's back. There's more going around. Doohan's out of it. Lutzu's around, and in behind him now, Zach Rattray White tries to pick up the pieces, and they're going to have 1.5 laps left to run, and they're an unformed pack. Anyone could still win it from here.
Ayumu Owasa leads from Brad Newman, from Jeremy Fairbairn, from Jared Filsell. That's your top 4 with a bit of space from the rest, but I do not see them working together. I see them fighting each other, and that means everyone else still stands a chance. Don't give up now, because this one, it's fireworks ready to go off.
Oh, I think they're already starting to go off. Somebody might have lit the fuse too soon, because it's about to erupt as they come back onto the oval. And Owasa doesn't lead. It's going to be Brad Newman. And Newman's probably been the most aggressive in terms of the blocking drivers. And something happened to Jack Doohan in the middle of that one. He's got a black flag. That might be incident point limits. As Ayumu Owasa, by the way, also has one. Yeah, it'll be incident point penalties. 20 incident points will net you a penalty. Then every 6 from there on. So there is certainly a penalty to
Wasa's got
Owasa.
a black flag, yeah.
And Jack Doohan. And Fairbairn backs in just to look for a line to go through. As they come off the bus stop, take your pick. Who have you got your eyes on here, Dave?
All of them. I don't know. I simply couldn't tell you. Everyone stands an equal opportunity inside of the top 7, top 8 as they come around on the banking across the start-finish line for one more lap in race 1 of 2. Your top 4 are certainly sitting pretty, but you do not count out Mossman or Christensen if someone's going to bump them up to these leaders as they fan out rather than freight training.
Owasa tried to get help from Jeremy Fairbairn, and Fairbairn said, yeah, there'll be none of that. You're not getting any of my assistance. Newman now latches onto Owasa, gives him a little bit of a bump, and here comes Filsell to the outside. 2 wide on the run down to turn number 1. Pick your lanes, down 3 wide. Newman to the middle, tries to open up a hole, and he does manage to find the space. Fairbairn goes from leading on the outside lane to 4th. Now Mossman's going to come back at him as well, and here comes Jacob Reed. Don't count him out. Owasa leads, but for how much longer?
Your top 7 all united through the infield of the Daytona International Speedway on the road course on the final lap. Owasa's got those elbows out, but there's only so much you can do when they get a run on you on the speedway.
By the way, Christensen just tagged back into this lead group. Some more squabbling brings Jamie Christensen back into it. It's 7 people will have an opportunity to win this one. Newman just about into the back end of Owasa. Owasa wide, drops out of the race lead. Now he's going to slide back through the pack and pick your poison. Sorry, it was Brad Newman. My apologies. Filsell's going to slot in behind him as well. And now Fairbairn drops into 3rd. Here comes Owasa back to 4th. Slides it down the inside. Mossman on the outside. And now you got to build a run from here. I think you've got to be 4th at the deepest in the pack to win it as you come off the chicane. And that is where Ayumu Owasa currently sits. Could he win it from here? Reed moves up to 5th. Frank Mossman drops back to 6th. But Filsell leads the way. Filsell's 2nd, pushing the way for Brad Newman. And now they all start to check. No one wants to lead. No one wants to be 2nd. They want to be deeper in the field, Dave.
Yeah, they do. We know it's a big run out of this chicane to the start-finish line, and we got to check up through the chicane because you want to be in that 3rd, 4th, 5th place, getting a run. If you're up front, you risk being in such a dangerous position.
And here they go. They fan out. Owasa now to the inside, gets to 2nd in that queue. Fairbairn goes for a move on the outside. They're 3 wide. Filsell's got the lead right now. Ayumu Owasa to the inside, gets to the lead down there, but Fairbairn's going to get a little bit of help from Jacob Reed. Now he's going to look to cover it. Owasa's got a whole head of steam, but Fairbairn's got the nose ahead. Fairbairn through the grass. Jacob Reed's going to win it by a few thousands from Ayumu Owasa. And that was just the heat for Brad Newman as he gets back to 3rd. Filsell to 4th and Frank Mossman to 5th. And oh boy, Give me a few more rounds of this for your Saturday nights.
MX5s always turn it on at a high-speed circuit like this at Daytona. You know you're setting up for that final run out of the Le Mans chicane, long run to the checkered flag, and unfortunately, a little bit of contact there. Spinning out your leader, but Jacob Reed coming through and taking the victory.
Well, I thought it was a little bit closer than that because there was not all that much in it. But you got to remember, Mazda MX-5s, they don't move. They cover the ground not quite as quickly. Just a 10th in it for Reed from Newman from Phil Cell. Yuma Iwasa picks up a penalty, goes to the rear end of the field in 11th. Phil Cell 3rd, Mossman, Fairburn, and Zach Rattray White. Fairburn had the lead. I think he thought he picked the moment right. And then he didn't quite get himself cleared when he turned down to block and get a little bit of help. And that was the key move on the final straight.
Yeah, we've seen it, that going bump, bump, bump. The cars are so unsettled. They don't have big downforce at high speed on the banking. They do get a little bit loose. They get even looser when you get some rear bumper contact that's offset like that. And of course, everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to go for it. Things like that happen, but a super close finish, as you would expect. Everyone with the dog in the fight at the end of race one there.
Oh my word. That was phenomenal. And
can we do it again?
Oh yeah, we got another 40 minutes of that, so take what that was, double it. And having a look at the fuel, I didn't actually see a fuel limit on the cars either, Dave, so I don't think is actually going to be a pit stop in this one. So that'll take some strategy out of that, because that's nearly better, I feel.
Yeah, well, they're going to fuel them up. They're going to get ready for a longer race. We're going to step away and come back with race 2 of the DoohanOK MX5 series from Daytona Beach.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Well, after hooking up the oxygen canister, I can say I am firmly ready and prepared for another 40 minutes of that. But before we get into 40 minutes worth of MX5 racing around Daytona Beach in Florida, we are going to have a quick look at what is coming your way in the DoohanOK MX5 series. But I fear, Dave, that they might have missed the best round here at Daytona. But for race 2, we're heading to the streets of Belle Isle. Round number 3, we're going to be off to Bathurst on the 13th of July. Round 4 is going to be another gangbuster in terms of draft pack racing from Sandown. It's very, very rare that the pack gets broken up there. Circuit of the Americas is one of the longer laps, albeit it'll be the West Circuit when we head there for round number 5 on the 10th of August. And finally, nearly a spiritual home of the MX5s on iRacing, Virginia International Raceway, the full layout on the 17th of August. It's honestly, I'm a big fan of Virginia International Raceway. It's probably one of my favorites on the platform. Doesn't get used enough.
Yeah, I've driven an MX5 around VIR. Cute little thing about that layout is, well, that's called the full layout. It is shorter than Grand West or Grand East, but it is the typical sports car course of VIR. Looks like a bit of a cheese wedge at that angle. But yeah, some great tracks, different character across all of them. Well, we've got Daytona to start things off. Belle Isle is certainly a little different, a little less super speedway-like. Bathurst, though, really long straights for these type of cars. With Mountain Straight and Conrod Straight, you definitely get slipstreaming and pack racing and bump drafting around there. Sandown could be the same. Of course, 2 long straights on the front stretch, on the back stretch there, and COTA and VIR to bring it all to a close. It's off to a very exciting start, and we've actually and then seen across the chat a couple of drivers who are going to be joining us in the future rounds as well.
Yeah, and it's going to be even better, I think, as we head throughout the season as well. Streets of Detroit Balal, that's going to be a tough, technical, tricky one. But the benefits of MX5 are going to go double well. And I'm looking forward to seeing the MX5 with a little bit of wet racing action as well. That's going to be something unique. Entry-level cars, draft pack racing, and the updates that the MX5 has received over the last couple of years, it's no longer the lazy beast that sort of floats around. Now it's stiff, it's highly sprung, and there's a little bit of attitude in the car. That rear end, she steps out a little bit on throttle these days, Dave. She's a beautiful platformer car.
Yeah, more horsepower than they used to have, better gearbox than they used to have. You used to never really use first gear or sixth gear or any of that, but now they've got the Sadev Racing sequential gearbox in that you really get to use all of the gears. You're always in the sweet spot of revving out that engine, and they line up for race number 2, again for a standing start on the banking, in the same order that they just completed race 1.
But probably worth noting this time that there's a 20 incident point penalty and then a DQ limit at 26. So if you spend 25 incidents very, very early on in the race, you're going to be puttering around on tiptoes for the remainder of it. And just hearing as well, there is a compulsory pit stop for this race. Lights are going to come on. We're going to be green flag racing as rear ends of Mazda MX-5s wiggle away. But for those who didn't spin tyres at the front end of town, they got the better launch. Jacob Reed is going to lead us down into turn 1, but Newman's already looking for just a touch of advantage around the outside. And that clean lane of air. Phil Sell slots back into third. And, oh yeah, just the screaming of tyres in pain as cold MX5 tyres take the Daytona's turn 1.
Again, 0% chance of any precipitation out there in race number 2. But it is a 20 degrees Celsius track temperature, a little on the cooler side. It does take them a minute or so to get in. Oh, I think we've got another United 737 coming into land beside us.
I think they're going to have to take a look over this way and take note of some of the racing actions we fan out down into turn 5 this time by once again. Oh boy, MX5s never change, never ever change. This is what I'm here for, is more of this. As they head on to the oval for the first time of the feature race, 40 minutes. And given that we just got through 10 laps in heat number 1, I get the feeling we might only be 19 in terms of the feature. There's just long enough that we'll eliminate that one extra lap. So
yeah, and then you add in the pit stop as well that could cost 30 seconds, a minute, whatever it ends up being as far as the delta around here. So yeah, I reckon 19 laps is what we're headed for. If you'd never seen real MX5 Cup racing, you'd think that this was silly video game stuff, but it's legitimately how these kind of cars race at a racetrack like this. Everyone gets into it, everyone bumps someone else along. It's pack racing. You're trying to set yourself up for those final laps, and it's just mayhem all the way through, start to finish. That's how they do it.
Yeah, and I tell you what, at the moment it looks a little bit like the old tandem drafting days there, Dave, because everyone's sort of got one drafting partner at the moment that's sort of pushing them along, to use the NASCAR terminology. It's going to be Phil Sell from Doohan to lead us back to the stripe to complete lap number 1 of our feature race. Compulsory pit stop will be worth keeping an eye on. I remember what we talked about out of heat number 1 as well, that drivers were able to drive their way back into the racing pack when the racing got intense. Do you just all of a sudden, I wouldn't go straight away, Dave, but maybe around lap 5, get to the pit lane and go, all right, I want some clear air?
I think up front I'm going long, but in the middle of the pack, in the deeper in the pack, I'd just pit with anyone who wants to pit with me. If I see someone quick in front of me head to the lane, I'll follow them.
Going to be really, really interesting to keep half an eye on that one, as Christensen and Lutzu are the last 2 cars that feed down into turn number 5. Everyone else just about single filed out up at the front end of town at the moment. Fastest lap on the first time by was Phil Sells 2:17.078, albeit standing start out of the way. That time's going to tumble by the wayside. And looks like Doohan and Phil Sell are doing a reasonable job of working together way up at the pointy end here this time, Dave.
Yeah, everyone's definitely... You learn something every time you go racing, and it's not just about, oh, how does my car behave? What are the track conditions? But, you know, how are we playing this game? You know, who's passing, who's doing teamwork? How aggressive can I be, and when is what they've learned out of race number 1 that sets them up to try to achieve higher in race 2.
Thomas McMillan fed in very, very aggressively in front of Jacob Reed, and now Jacob Reed's got Brad Newman Brad Newman with Jeremy Fairburn trying to get to the outside quarter panel for him. This is the onboard from Jacob Reed as he's trying to push... Sorry, my apologies. I believe... Yeah, no, it was Jacob Reed trying to push Thomas McMillan back to the pointy end of things. McMillan now going to step out of line, and Newman's going to go to the outside. 3 wide. As we set it up here on lap number 3, the run down at turn number 1. Shoving a nose deep down the inside. And elbowing Phil Sell out of the way is going to be Frank Mossman. Picks up a whole bunch of spots. And
holy dooly, the ride that Fairbairn just went for on the outside of turn 1. My man nearly had the rallycross layout of the Daytona infield here, the way that he went. And Zach Rattray White, Jamie Christensen both hit the pit lane. But take a look at this. Round the outside, gets a bit of a checkup. Whoa!
Oh. How long's that jump been there? I guess
Find yourself a Florida chiropractor after that one, my friend.
Get the old extended suspension arms, I think, for the MX5. I think you're 100% right, though. That rallycross layout. That's a leftover from the rallycross layout, that one, all the way out there. It'd be interesting to see now what this does to the field, because the problem that Rattray White and Christensen have got is, as they exit the pit lane, they're not connected. That is going to be a problem.
Most of all for Christensen, I think, who is going to have to hope that Rattray White takes pity or decides that they need a buddy. Otherwise, you get sort of left out to dry a little bit there. And I think Zach Rattray White knows what's up. And he goes, I just got to back it up here and get my buddy.
Yeah, well, he's cost himself, 1.5 seconds to set this up. He's going to gain...
You'll get it back the next lap. Seriously, you'll get 1.5 seconds from working as a pair. You'll get it back.
By the time they get back to the start-finish line, they're going to have 3/4 of that back, I reckon. So next lap, they'll gain for sure. Meanwhile, back up at the front end, again, the old fight continues as Doohan leads the way from McMillan. And now trying to throw it around the outside is going to be Frank Mossman once again. And he's going to take Newman with him. Newman picks up the big old draft and goes right up and around the outside to the point. And I get the feeling there'll be a few more P's and Q's minded this time by, as they're a little bit more conscious on picking up car contacts. That 20 incident point count. It cost Yuma Iwasa big time in that first race.
Why'd you say that?
Frank Mossman spins it out at turn 1 with a little bit of help, facing the wrong direction, unfortunately. And
just to clarify that I'm David Haynes and he's Scott Rankin when you write your angry letters.
I tell you what, Dave, I've been banned from talking about Synergy Sim Racing because the last few times I've done that, it's given them an almighty curse.
Oh dear, so that's tough for Frank Mossman, who ends up behind Jeremy Fairbairn. Hasn't made his stop yet, and so things start to look good for Jamie Christensen and Zach Rattray White. If leaders up here keep tripping over each other, well, it's just the two of them back there. They can bump draft all day long, every straight, every opportunity, and not get as messy or as out of control, because only two of them are tangoing.
Yeah, and remember, for every car that you're alongside of, that's that much more momentum you have to shave off to get through the corners as well. And in particular, I think the biggest key is the bus stop. Going through there too wide costs you a whole bunch of momentum. As, yet again, they're going to feed out and do it once more because Brad Newman likes car racing. Brad Newman likes being aggressive, and there he goes to the inside, back to the pointy end. And now Jack Doohan will try and line up and give him a big old shot to the rear to push out as McMillan settles back into third. Although that was a lot prettier that time by there, Dave. I think they're starting to get the message. Hey, there's a few guys no longer racing each other back there. We might have to work together here.
Of course, on the timing column, you can just make a note. And where is Jamie Christensen in 10th, who has pitted relative to the rest, who haven't until now. They were starting to gain just a little bit.
Well, there's going to be a bulk of the field now comes to pit lane. In fact, there's only going to be 2 cars continue in. Jacob Reed, Jared Filsell, and Jeremy Fairburn does continue on, but he's 3 seconds back at this point in time. So he's going to lose a whole bunch of time. So the bulk of the field not opting to wait. Newman's in, Doohan's in, McMillan, Lutsu, Owasa, all to the lane, and Frank Mossman, the last car to finally trundle down in. Now, we've got to keep an eye on where do Rattray White and Christensen pop out, because they're on their way down past the start-finish line. Those are the 2 drivers that have continued on, which is Reed and Filsell. They might just run it long now, Dave. They may not elect to come in because it might just work out a little bit better. That is Christensen from Zach Rattray White. And the cars to the inside of that shot is the rest of the pack that did pit. But I think we might have some speeding in pit lane penalties because we might have lost McMillan. No, McMillan's going to feed back in a little bit away, but no longer with the pack, and they blend all seamlessly together. God, racing car drivers at the top end, they just find a way to just sort of fit the zipper back together nice and evenly, don't they, Dave?
No penalties through the pit lane, but it is a long pit exit there. You've got to get around the inside hairpin there before the pit lane speed limit releases these days. So it's a long run from your box at pit lane speed limit around the inside of turn 1 before you release off, get back into the race and release back into the pack. Top 3 haven't pitted, the rest of them have now. And it's Newman from Lutsu. Christensen and Zach Rattray White lost nothing from when they pitted, so they'll probably be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, back to the point for them. And now it becomes, what do the leaders do? As Jared Filsell and Jacob Reed exit the bus stop chicane and the run back to the start-finish line. Filsell looks to take a draft and actually no longer supports Jacob Reed. I think he's trying to fox him into potentially pitting this time by. As we've got some decisions to make as this pack comes to the bus stop once more. No, they're going to continue on, by the way. Going to go another lap. So not electing to pit this time by for Jacob Reed and Jared Filsell.
Fairburn will pit though, so he's going to end up in a weird spot. 7 seconds behind the leaders and then going to be behind that next pack of cars. The drama at turn 1, the sick airtime, really costing when you just need to be part of the group until those final 10 minutes. Not dissimilar to the Daytona 500 or the Bathurst 1000. You've got to have your ticket to those last couple of laps.
Well, I hope he got some tyre cooling out of it because they weren't in contact with the ground for a fair period there. So hopefully, degree 2 might help him in terms of the long run pace. But Fairburn's into the lane and not going to be with that lead pack. Lutsu goes back to the pointy end. And they are working together. About 5 cars in this pack, all single filed out at the moment. Oh, yeah, look, I'll stop talking about it because Newman just decides, no, I've had enough of this single file business. I want to be back at the front end of town.
So you've got 5 altogether here that we expect will inherit the race lead. Pretty close going back and forth their pace with Jared Filsell and Jacob Reed. Ooh, hello. Just a little hello. I think that's how they greet each other in France.
A little bit of swapping paint, swapping sponsors, and swapping door panels, albeit the amount of car racing most of this mob have under their belts, I don't think they require the obligatory little bit of signage left around. Take a souvenir home with you. Brad Newman will try and find a way to slot back in behind Christensen and does so. But it's going to come down to momentum. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Group I'm curious about is McMillan and Owasa, because they got, 6 seconds. You'll just see them back here. That's Thomas McMillan ahead of Ayumu Owasa. Can they catch? We said, 2-3 seconds behind, no worries. Like, you can work together with one car, you'll get there. But it's a tough ask with 6 or 7 seconds, and then that next group of cars is Fairburn, who's rejoined just with Frank Mossman as well. Guys who are doing the best to make sure that everyone else joins the party. these drivers who won't bump on the banking, but will pull out, make the second lane, make the third lane. Lutzu and Christensen really giving an opportunity for some of those other cars to join this party.
Tell you what, Dave, did you take part in all the week 13 shenanigery? Oh, so Yuma Wassa. Oh, we're going to have a huge accident at the back end of the field of Wassa and Millen going in the fence. I think there might have actually been a technical issue back there, so that will ruin their run. And now becomes effectively race over for those drivers, unless the lead pack starts to squabble. They're not squabbling enough. Oh, and how about our lead pack? They did lose a touch of time to Lutzu, Christensen and Newman, so that will get things sorted. And a caution flag is going to tidy things all back up and get us all back together.
It's an iRacing safety car. It closes pit lane for Jared Filsell and Jacob Reed. So the two drivers who hung it out longer than the rest maybe regret that, but if they come through the lane when it opens, then there'll be one more lap of safety car after that. They will join the pack. So too will Ayumu Uwasa, Frank Mossman, Thomas McMillan, and Jeremy Fairburn. So it brings us all together again, but it definitely looks like it'll send Jared Filsell and Jacob Reed to the tail of the pack for the restart. And exactly how much of this 40-minute race does the safety car eat up?
Yeah, I think there was just a little bit of discussion about getting it cleared as quickly as they possibly can. So you want to get it out of the way. I believe pitting under this caution period and then coming back out is what we're going to refer to as hard mode. They're going to go to the rear, pick up their pit stop, and then pop back out at the head of the tail end of the queue and go back to racing. So Phil will be the first one into the lane. And they are racing back to get back to this safety car. They're going to try and get it shortened as much as possible, but first and foremost, they're going to get the pack underway. So it'll be form up behind the safety car, which is already down in turn 5 because the iRacing pace car does not wait for Mazda MX5s.
Who's the pace car driver these days? It's Fred or Frank? Fred, someone. He's been given a lot more training, but no one's perfect. So there you have Reed and Filsell given special dispensation to make their stop. And they come back out.
And they feed back out just ahead of the pack.
That safety car driver.
Bert Myland is taking tips.
This guy's got no chill.
He's having fun. My favourite part is watching the rear end of that safety truck get all out and sideways. By the way, Virginia International Raceway, he has no chill. If you've never seen within the iRacing platform, the iRacing safety car pulling out of the pit lane to catch the field at Virginia International Raceway, oh boy, it's something special. He hauls, absolutely hauls, to get to the front end of the pack around there. There is no caution taken. At the moment, meantime, it's taking the field 3/4 of a lap. They're going to get to the bus stop still at full speed here, by the way, David Haynes. These MX5s are going as fast as they possibly can.
Let's get a speed check on the pace truck.
It's at 96 kilometers an hour at the moment, with field coming at 200, just a touch over 200 kilometers an hour, trying to catch him. So it does take a fair while. What caught him they have.
Yep, we got him.
Now, the tail end of the field, this will be the interesting part. How do you play this if you're Jeremy Fairburn, Thomas McMillan? Because we've got about 22 minutes worth of racing action left to go. And when do you time your run? Because the feeling was everyone sort of wanted to leave it as late as possible to find the position they were in. There was no working your way forward, David Haynes, in the dying stages of that one. It was everyone lifted off the gas. Nobody wanted to lead coming off the bus stop, and then eventually they all had to go.
Yeah, we get set for a very interesting back half of the race number 2. And with enough time to move forward through the field a little bit before we get to the final lap as well. The only driver yet to catch the field, Jeremy Fairburn, has just done so now. So you got all of your field back together and the lights go off the truck. Does it say iRacing pace truck? Official pace truck. That's good. I don't want any unofficial pace trucks. I've driven up and down I-95. I've seen some unofficial pace vehicles, that's for sure.
I always love looking at the hardware that goes on and around the safety car, because they're always filled with all the latest bits and pieces. Got to have communication in a pacing vehicle. You've got to have. I love the bits they did with Burt Mylander. Was that 2022? When they did the full dive into what goes on inside the Formula One.
All the radio equipment, all the other stuff, yeah.
Lights, screens, telemetry, communications with race control. Yeah, a lot of it.
And then there was a podcast appearance by the medical car driver, which is former Carrera Cup racer. Oh god, the name will come to me. But yeah, the medical car is also very interesting. It's like, hey, you need to be able to get around and do one lap in the time that Formula One cars do 2 laps, flat out green flag racing, so you don't end up in the way. And that's, as Formula One cars have gotten faster, been a tougher ask of the medical car.
It's like a minute 10-second lap or something around Monaco, and that's the toughest race of them all. And you've got to have a ton of medical equipment on
Carl Reindler.
Carl
Reindler, medical car driver. Oh, it's driving me insane, dude.
By the way, all the drivers are thoroughly enjoying all of the in-sim communication facilities and having a bit of a giggle away and relaxing, because that's what it's all about, at the end of the day. Is sure, the racing's intense, but if you're not letting your hair down and having fun, why are you even here?
So that's lights off the truck. It's heading for pit lane shortly, and we're heading for a grandstand all-star 18 minutes of the final race to settle a winner. Jacob Reed won race 1, and he leads race 2, but the view behind him suggests that it's not going to be easy to go back-to-back.
Yeah, and it's going to be all set up with 10 of his fiercest rivals coming for him aggressively. Albeit there'll probably be some patience shown in these early few moments. Reminder of that 20 incident point penalty as well. Albeit it was cleared in the first race, so I get the feeling it'll be cleared here as well. I don't think they're too worried about it. I think the racing product is the focal point of this one. Green flag in the air. Jeremy Fairburn gets a hell of a launch from the rear end of the field, looking for a gap on Ayumu Iwasa. Now they're all fanning out 4 wide towards the front end of the field. Managed to feed themselves back in. And everyone's escaped thus far, and tyre sound screaming intensifies.
Yep, so 11 cars covered by 2.5 seconds, soon to compress once they get out of the infield and back onto the speedway racing once again. Jacob Reed with Brad Newman at his rear bumper. Looks like Phil Sell running it out a little wide through the first horseshoe before they get to the kink, and then into the second horseshoe. Already it's bumper to bumper for the race lead.
Yeah, and pick your dancing partner, pick your lane. Christensen went in very hard. But I think that was because Phil Sell was looking for a little bit of an early break to try and slot in behind Jacob Reed, and has now done so, looking for perhaps the invitation to go down the inside. Christensen slots back in. Doohan's going to try and over and under him. does get tried, does get to the bottom of the oval, and that's going to be a big old key. Jacob Reed gets forced to the outside as they come to the banking on this lap. Christensen's going to get back in 4th place, and that is going to leave absolutely nowhere for Jacob Reed. Can he slot into the pack? Elects not to do so, and that might be a wise choice.
Rattray Wide got spun around in turn 6, coming out of the infield back onto the speedway, and he drops away from what's now a leading 10 cars side by side. For that lead, Brad Newman goes in front of Phil Sell side by side with Jack Doohan, who slots into the 3rd position. Gianni Lutzu and Jamie Christensen, 2 big winners in this race so far. They started right at the tail of the field, and they're now 4th and 5th as we check out what happened to Zach Rattray White in the black car.
Gets a little bit of a helping hand from Thomas McMillan as he cuts his way through.
Gee, that's uncharacteristic, isn't it?
Hasn't done that before this evening, but it's been difficult trying to pick up your acceleration points as somebody gets a little bit of a lack of grip at the rear end of that car, and I think Brad Newman was looking for an opportunity to go around the outside of Jack Doohan, didn't quite eventuate. Now they're going to try and slot themselves in. Jamie Christensen gets the lead of this race for the first time tonight. Jared Filsell's going to try and go to his inside. He tried to cover it off, not an opportunity to do so. Filsell gets to the inside. Newman slots in behind Christensen, and here comes Doohan trying to cut back underneath the lot of them. Who's got the momentum? Who's got the drive? There's contact, tons of contact, 2 around in front of the field. Christensen and Doohan, and they go to the rear.
Here comes Zach Rattray White to catch up to them as well, but 2 cars spun out of the first horseshoe onto the grass. Jack Doohan and Jamie Christensen.
Finally managed to sort themselves out off of this restart, but not over for Christensen and Doohan. Just bumped each other. Now they'll have to work together to try and get back to the pack, and the pack is already starting to break up just a fraction as we get back underway. This oval section is going to be incredibly important, and Phil Sell is trying to run the gauntlet and get away from these guys at the moment, is on the fringe of breaking in the draft. If he gets out of here, that might be race over for the competition.
Let's see how it plays out. Still 15 minutes, a lot of racing. We've seen that pairs together can do a lot, so I wouldn't count out anyone. Jared Filsell gets so sideways through there, trying to break away. Well, Doohan and Christensen push each other, and I think that must be a slowdown for Mossman.
Absolutely a slowdown for Mossman. Way too much of the exit curbs, tried to carry the momentum, was in just a touch too hot. I think he might have now cleared that one as Frank Mossman. And Fairburn and Reed are going to build up a whole head of steam. Are they just about in the draft of Jared Filsell? Brad Newman is certainly trying his damnedest with a little bit of help from Gianni Lutzu. And something happened further back, I believe, as well. No, Reed's just slotting back in. There was something happened. They lost a little bit of momentum, and I believe Filsell has been tracked down. So we'll be back down to a 7-car pack. And Doohan and Christensen are starting to take a little bit of time out of everyone back up ahead. So they may get back to this pack. We're only a couple seconds out of it at the moment. So good news is, if you're a Doohan or Christensen fan, not over and done with.
I think I just saw Iwasa and Reed change a panel or two as Jacob Reed's dropped back a couple of spots. Ayumu Iwasa got through.
Frank Mossman was trying to slot in, and Thomas McMillan wasn't really... I don't know if he was trying to let him or trying to not let him back in, but either way, they lost a ton of momentum there, and now they're at risk of losing the pack up ahead, and McMillan wanted to lead the way to draft back up in. So pack the most broken up we've seen thus far. And that was the moment for Fairburn with a little bit of help from, I believe it was Ayumu. No, it was Reed. Sorry, my apologies.
So it drops Jeremy Fairburn all the way to the tail end of the field, just behind Zach Rattray White, who we've seen, link up and try to connect before. So maybe he'll do that to catch Jack Doohan and Jamie Christensen, who are trying to catch the top 7 with Jacob Reed at the tail of it, pushing Ayumu Iwasa up towards Frank Mossman, and you can see Jared Filsell's lead that once stood at about a second is down to just a couple of tenths, a couple of car lengths, and they're close enough to get him by the start-finish line at the end of this lap.
Yeah, and I'm just watching Doohan. I think they are actually starting to make time. And I think Iwasa has just picked himself up a slowdown penalty as well. No, probably just run a slot back in. Rattray White has picked himself up a slowdown penalty as well. So for Zach Rattray White, that's probably enough to eliminate him from contention. 11 minutes 40 seconds on the board means that we are going to have enough time for 5, maybe probably 6 more laps left in this one. So not done and dusted as it stands, but running out of time. And
you simply never say never, because we know that the last 2-3 laps are going to be absolutely mental. Oh, and that's Iwasa. No.
Mossman, as he slides out of contention off of the exit of turn 1. A couple of internet issues, I think, tonight for Frank Mossman, which hasn't helped things either. But he's now going to have Fairburn and Zach Rattray White for a little bit of drafting assistance. So 3-car pack may be able to reconnect up. If they can find a little bit of pace and get on to Christensen and Doohan, all 5 of those cars will be able to track down the race leaders as well.
So looking at Jack Doohan and the help that he's been getting from Jamie Christensen just to try to close in on the leader, who's now Johnny Lutsu ahead of Phil Sell. From McMillan, from Jacob Reed, gaining a couple of spots as he's gone through to 5th, and Iwasa up to 6th. Then there were 6 of them for the leading group, but it's only 3 seconds between Iwasa, the tail of the train, and Jack Doohan, the next group of cars.
And the thing that's really hurting the Doohan Christensen pack at the moment is they keep checking the car that's out in front keeps breaking away on the infield, and then everyone else just gets towed back up whenever they get back out to the oval. So the pace is remaining quite high as it stands, although that will change as they come off the bus stop this time, because now Lutsu and Phil Sell are just about connected up as they exit the bus stop. Interesting to see what the method is for everyone else in that pack at the moment, because Newman's been aggressive with his moves. He sits 3rd as he's going to get some assistance from McMillan and Reed as those 3 now connect up.
Looking pretty quick for the leaders. At the moment, the fastest lap of the race is at 2:07.6. But as Johnny Lutsu crosses the line, having been pushed around by Jared Philsell, they're still in the mid-208s, but quicker than Jack Doohan and Jamie Christensen by a couple of tenths, and that's crucial.
Now, they're not closing. They're just starting to lose touch just a little bit, so got to do something about that. How about
this does something about that? The dive bomb from 3rd place, Jared Philsell skittles the leaders.
And it's going to hold all of their momentum. McMillan goes back to 2nd place now. And this is what we were talking about now. They're all line astern, and this is Phil Sell gets aggressive, gets onto the grass, but he found the hole and gets out the other side.
Found it because he made it. And now, wow.
Jared
to 4th place as Thomas McMillan, Brad Newman and Gianni Lutzo get back through. But this is what you need to see happen from the leaders. If you're any of those other group of cars thinking, can we catch them? You need to see nonsense like this happening through the corners, through the twisty bits, checking up the pace of the leaders through the corners. It brings Jack Doohan and Christensen just a little bit closer. If they keep it up like that for every lap from here to the end, Jeremy Fairbairn, Zach Rattray White also stand a chance.
Yeah, and you know what? I reckon they've taken about a second out of them over the last couple of laps. So, my
Since
apologies.
the first horseshoe.
Yeah, from the horseshoe this lap. So they have absolutely started to take time back out of them. And Fairbairn and Rattray White have connected up. The problem is for those guys now is that Mossman's become disconnected from the rear bumper. Could be anything going from that battle pack, but they've lost more time as they come off of the bus stop this time by. Jack Doohan's now back under 3 seconds to the race leader, and Johnny Lutsu goes to the high side.
No slowdown, he's just playing games.
He's trying to give himself a response. McMillan's going to swing from the bottom to the top. Goes around the outside, going to take Jacob Reed with him, and Lutsu finds a track to settle into. And some lifting from Ayumu Iwasa. He's now playing spectator at the back end of this pack.
Yeah, everyone's pit stops were at least 10 seconds, so I don't think, and then with the caution, that we're going to have anyone particularly short on fuel here, and Iwasa's stop was 17 seconds, so he's not playing a fuel game, he's playing a, I'm going to leave 1 or 2 car lengths between these guys in front in case they all go and skittle each other. It's the Stephen Bradbury position.
Yeah, and 2 seconds now, just over 2 seconds between Jack Doohan and Ayumu Iwasa. And they've got a chance. There's going to be 3 more laps, including this one. So time's starting to run out. There will not be a 4th lap. There is absolutely no time. There will not only be 2 laps. There is just a bit too much time for that. 3 is right on the money. And Doohan's now under 2 seconds to this leading pack. It is all working for Christensen and Doohan as they start to come back to the race leaders. They're just about in the tow as they come back out on the oval. A little bit of bump draft in the exit of the bus stop. Actually, you know what? They're going to be in this mix when they get to turn 1, I think.
The way it is right now, you've got 2 wide for the lead, 3 wide behind that, banging door handles. Iwasa still with the best view of it, but in the most sane position. He's also going to bridge that gap backwards to Jack Doohan, who's only 2 seconds behind him. Iwasa's trying to work out where is the crazy going to happen from the high side to the low side to the high side, back up again and rolling out of the throttle so early to try to get a steamroller of a run out of here and dodge that.
Brad Newman's going to go around, and I think Thomas McMillan was the other driver. Lutsu's lost all momentum, so he's not going to have a whole bunch of helping hand. Where does Doohan go? Does he help Lutsu? He doesn't. Swings to the outside. Now the leaders is going to be Jared Filsell and Jacob Reed. 2 when they get back to the stripe. Oh, and by the way, I was watching the numbers from the trailing pack all the way back there. Fairburn's now going to be able to pick up a huge tow on Brad Newman and start to pull themselves back to the lead pack. Not over yet, but a long shot, and we'll need a bunch of checking up this time by. Leader is Reed from Filsell.
And it's 5 minutes to go. 3 more laps.
Oh, it is 3.
The complexion up front has changed significantly this time through the bus stop.
Things I've learned this week, David Haynes, don't ask me for math. It's never going to work out in your favour.
To be fair, literally, just before I said it, my lap counter updated from 2 to go to 3 to go. And then I was like, you know what, that checks out. If we've got 5 minutes, but we're doing 2-minute, 10-second laps, that is going to be 3 more because we've got 2 and the remainder, and we always take the remainder of the full lap before the checkered flag gets thrown here at Daytona. Never does a checkered flag accidentally get thrown early at Daytona in a sports car race.
None of this silly green-white checker madness either, although it could absolutely use some. In the meantime, though, back to the pointy end. Jacob Reed hangs onto it as they come out the other side. Doohan's now in the pack, as is Jamie Christensen, who's slotted his way all the way back to 3rd. And Fairburn is taking some time back out, but they're going to potentially... They might get there in the last lap of the race. They just might. It's going to take a Hail Mary, but they may be in contention, and what that will mean is that when they get on the scene, they'll be able to get to the bus stop at full steam ahead. Jack Doohan recognises he's not going to get that one done. Swings to the high side, brings some momentum as he swings back down, and we're talking about gravity earlier in the piece, David Haynes. They've worked out how to use it on the banks of Daytona.
Yeah, if this was a proper Hollywood production, you'd have been going 160 k's an hour, looked out your side mirror, made eye contact with the other driver.
Oh, Yumu Iwasa! My word, the handiwork! That's going to need a replay.
So sideways through the chicane.
It needs running in the 90s. It absolutely needs running in the 90s. And he had help, but was it Lutsu? I think it might have been Lutsu who offered him a little bit of help. No, it was Jack Doohan. And Jacob Reed picks up a slowdown penalty through the bus stop chicane. It's not done. It's running out of time as Zach Rattray White. There's going to be 2 more laps left to run as they cross the start-finish line.
This is up front, Filsell, Christensen, Doohan, Lutsu. You see that gap. Iwasa, who kept his nose ahead of his tail, somehow has Jacob Reed just behind. And then Brad Newman's leading the group, but it's 9 seconds behind the leaders, and I'm not sure there is time if your top 4 link up properly.
No, and that's the key, is link up properly. But the thing is, when there's only 4 cars in this lead pack, and Iwasa's only just on the outer, do you start to fight for position just a little bit harder? Because you just might. You just might. And it's now on like Donkey Kong for 7th spot as well, because that pack, I think they've just recognized it's not going to happen. So instead of trying to get back to the leaders, let's just scrap amongst ourselves. Reed is now tagged onto the rear bumper of Iwasa, who will try and drive their way back to the lead quartet. And that's them in the back of that shot. There's Ayumu Iwasa from Jacob Reed. But it's Phil Sell from Christensen, Jack Doohan and Johnny Lutsu. And a bunch of laps ago, Christensen and Doohan might have been looking at things and going, yeah, that's probably about all she wrote for us tonight. This will be all that we can get back. Well, that's changed in a heartbeat. They went into the bus stop chicane too wide. And this will be the second last time tonight. As they exit the bus stop, they get the power back to the ground. No slowdown penalties for too much curb taken for our lead quartet. And
Can
now...
we get Jamie Christensen a MVP award or something? Just bumping everyone everywhere. Like, come on, let's keep this train rolling. He bumped Jack Doohan back up to the pack who now leads. He bumped Jared Filsell along. He bumped Gianni Lutsu. He's like, I've got a bit of speed and I'm going to share it around. Come on, let's keep this train going.
By the way, Brad Newman's just been ejected stage right. I think Jeremy Fairburn went with him, so it's going to be over for that group. Iwasa and Reed are trying to work together. One more lap left to run. White flags in the air. And whilst that may mean a slow car in sports car racing, in NASCAR it's one more lap left to run.
Phil Sell went so wide through turn number 1. Jack Doohan still leads, but it sends Lutsu up to 2nd, Christensen up to 3rd, and now you've really got to play your gamesmanship.
And Iwasa and Reed have brought their way back in, becomes 6 at the head of the field. And now it is gamesmanship like you wouldn't believe. Gamesmanship of the highest order. Who's going to check up? And it's going to be the swing wide from Jack Doohan, as he does not want to lead when they come back onto the oval. And Christensen's going to try and make his way back through as well. The final time as they run off of turn 7, they swing back onto the oval and let the draft games commence.
Christensen ends up so wide out there, so wide. Probably didn't want to drop that many spots. End up 4th, maybe even 5th in the train. Iwasa is finally getting a little more aggressive, and Lutsu knows what's happening. He's all the way up against the Armco, all the way around the outside of the banking. Please someone else lead. And they are shedding so much speed, all of them right now. Wow, this is going to be a race won at the slowest speed on the final lap.
Here we go. Who's your partner? Who's your partner? Who's going to lead? Lutsu doesn't want to lead. Doohan goes to the head. Now they enter the bus stop chicane. 3 wide of the final lap. A little bit of a bump, which means Christensen's going to cut the chicane. His race will be done. 4 in single file as they exit the chicane. Lutsu got to slow down on the final lap of the race. Here comes Phil Sell. He'll try and get it all wound up. Ayumu Iwasa has managed to cut his way through. He's gone from 6th on this lap all the way back to 2nd. Drafting has commenced. Swings to the bottom of Jack Doohan. Where does Phil Sell come through? Do they tangle? Cuts his way from the bottom of the track back to the top. Run with Phil Sell. Phil Sell's going to have the momentum. Iwasa tries to block. Cuts below the yellow line. Can't pass under the yellow. Ayumu Iwasa has control. No one's going to run. Ayumu Iwasa at the line.
Oh, he's tripped up there over his own tyre, over the checkered flag, Daytona style. But Iwasa from 3rd had the perfect run with just the right distance back off of Jack Doohan. 4-5 car lengths that he got that run, that leap, that overspeed, then came down to the yellow line to protect to the inside. Phil Sell maybe read it wrong. Phil Sell had so much speed but went the wrong way. Lined up at the wrong register, and Iwasa comes away with the race 2 win.
Yeah, and a little bit of the self-serve registers, and it was the check-up. You've got to check the momentum, and this is the replay as they come off of the banking. Ayumu Iwasa timed the run to perfection, but then he had to cover it. And it was Jack Doohan trying to slot in and pick the right lane. Iwasa covered Phil Sell all the way to the yellow, and can't advance your position down underneath the yellow line in the feature race here tonight. Will take the checkered flag for Ayumu Iwasa. And it'll be Phil Sell home in 2nd, Jack Doohan in 3rd, Jacob Reed from Johnny Lutsu. Christensen did get back in 6th after cutting the chicane on the final lap, losing all his momentum. Thomas McMillan from Brad Newman, Zach Rattray-White, Jeremy Fairburn, and Frank Mossman had some issues at the end as well.
So as always, super small margins in the results from MX5s at Daytona International Speedway in race 2 of DoohanOK MX5 series. Owasa from Phil Self, from Doohan, Jacob Reed, Gianni Lutzu, Jamie Christensen, Thomas McMillan, Brad Newman, Zach Rattray White, Jeremy Fairburn, and Frank Mossman ended up being a retirement out of that one. But it was just so unpredictable, and you've got to have your wits about you come that final lap. Owasa ended up in the right spot, made all of the right moves. Doohan unfortunately placing himself a little wrong by going for it through the bus stop as he did. And then Phil Sell had the opportunity, had the speed, but just went left when he should have gone right.
Yeah, sometimes you zig when you should have zagged. And that is car racing. That was the DoohanOK MX5 series. Race number 1 from Daytona International Speedway. The road course provided draft pack action. Next time out, it's going to be on the street circuit. It's tough, it's tricky, it's technical. It's in downtown Detroit. It's Detroit Belle Isle is the location for the next round on Saturday, the 29th of June. 2 weeks away before we go racing once more with MX5s. And David Haynes, oh boy, that was fun tonight. You keen for another round in 2 weeks' time?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a quick lap around the relatively compact circuit of Detroit Belle Isle, so you'll get a lot of racing and a lot of laps in, and you do have that high-speed back straight, the Strand. You do carry a lot of speed through sweeping turn number 2 for a long run down towards turn 3. MX5s can create great racing anywhere. I'm sure Detroit Belle Isle will be the same. 29th of June, it might be some nice sunny weather, some nice summer weather in Detroit, or maybe the skies might bring something just to spice it up a little bit. You never know, but it will be great racing. Congratulations to the winners from both races, Jacob Reed and Ayumu Owasa stealing race number 2.
Yeah, phenomenal racing action. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap things up here tonight, I believe, in terms of our coverage of the DoohanOK MX5 series. We will join you in 2 weeks' time. Detroit Belle Isle, will there be parts falling off, or will somebody be falling over that checkered flag first? You will have to join us in 2 weeks' time to find out. See you all then.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.